The first reports of the Golgoth anomaly did not come from the Adeptus Administratum or the Ordo Xenos, but from a forgotten listening post drifting along the edge of Segmentum Obscurus, there among dying stars. A handful of Imperial Navy observers detected what they described as a tier of viridian fire across the heavens of the death world Golgoth. It was unlike any warp signature ever recorded. No demonic resonance, no psychic interference, only raw, pulsing energy that seemed alive. Golgoth itself was a forsaken wasteland, a world left to rot after millennia of unending war. Its skies stained crimson by twin suns, and its ground buried beneath layers of ancient metal and bone. Yet, on that day, something emerged from the rift, something beyond understanding, beyond reason, and beyond classification. The first Vox entries refer to it only as Subject Gamma-Primus, the Green Titan. Before the Inquisition silenced those records, fragments of the surviving log described a figure of impossible scale. It crashed into the ground with such force that the planet's seismic sensors flared across every Mechanicus relay in the sector. The impact carved a crater 50 meters wide, revealing the metallic strata of Golgoth's crust. From its center rose a humanoid shape, taller than any known Xenos or Astartes. Its skin glowed an unnatural, radioactive green, its muscles like woven steel cables, its breathing deep and thunderous. The nearby Orks, feral remnants of old WAAAG etches, were the first to witness its arrival. At first, they charged, believing it to be some new avatar of Gork or Mork. Their crude weapons shattered against its skin. Their roars were answered not with words, but with a sound so powerful it shook the ruins for miles, a roar that seemed to tear the very air apart. The first Ork died instantly, obliterated by a single punch that turned its torso into mist. The next was broken across the creature's knee like a child's toy. Those who survived fell back, trembling. Then, slowly, instinct took over. They knelt. The Mechanicus field notes recovered centuries later described the event with clinical detachment. Entity Gamma-Primus exudes bioenergetic resonance, consistent with WOG's psychic field, but magnified exponentially. Probability of Orkoid subservience, 98.2%. Within hours, every Ork across the wasteland began to converge on the crater, drawn not by sound nor sight, but by something deeper, a pull in their blood. To them, this was divine manifestation. The largest among them, a war boss called Grimdark, approached the stranger, his massive power claw sparking with stolen Imperial energy. He challenged the Green Titan, as was the Ork way. The duel lasted less than a minute. Grimdarker's claw bit deep into the Titan's shoulder, tearing flesh and drawing blood that hissed when it hit the soil. But instead of weakening, the creature grew stronger. Its muscles swelled, its rage ignited. With one hand it crushed the power claw, and with the other it lifted Grimdarker by the throat. The sound of the Ork's neck breaking was heard kilometers away. The Green Titan spoke only once, in broken, low Gothic, Hulk strongest. Hulk warboss, now. From that moment, the WAAAGH began anew. Across the continent, a storm of psychic energy erupted, visible from orbit as a green aurora that rippled across the poisoned sky. The Imperium had seen countless Ork wars before, but never like this. Something was different. This time, the chaos was organized. The Hulk's roar became command. His fury became discipline. The Orks built under his watch. They forged under his direction. For the first time in recorded history, the green tide began to act with unity. Imperial aspect scans revealed crude forges operating in patterns of industrial precision. Mechs constructed tanks that did not explode upon ignition, aircraft that could actually maintain lift, and weapons that fired in synchronized rhythm. The WAAAGH field itself seemed altered, as though bent to a single will, his will. Mechanicus observers theorized that this was no mere Xenos warlord, but a being from beyond the galaxy, perhaps beyond the very fabric of this reality. The creature's tissues contained isotopes unknown to Imperial science, its energy field alien to both warp and matter. Some Magos whispered that the Green Titan had crossed from another dimension, a realm where emotion itself shaped power. Others dismissed such talk as heresy. Yet no one could explain the phenomenon that followed his arrival. For the first time in centuries, Golgoth's warp storms weakened. Demonic activity dropped to near zero. Even astropathic interference subsided. It was as though the creature's presence devoured the warp itself, replacing it with something new, a green psychic field that resonated through orkoid consciousness across light years. Orks everywhere began to stir, compelled by a new song, a new god, a new war. The Imperium called it Apostatus Viridianus, the Green Heresy. The Inquisition demanded investigation. But by the time orders reached Segmentum Command, Golgoth was no longer just a planet. It was a fortress. An armada of Ork vessels had gathered around it, their hulls repaired, their engines stable, their formations deliberate. At the center of it all stood their war boss, a colossal figure clad in armor, forged from the bones of titans and the wreckage of Imperial tanks. The Green Titan had united them not through chaos, but through logic born of fury. Even the Ork's innate tendency toward infighting had vanished. He had done what no other being, Ork or human, had ever achieved. He had made the WAAAGH think. The Imperium watched in silence and fear. No Astartes force was dispatched, no exterminatus order approved. The records suggest hesitation at the highest levels, perhaps even fear. For the Magos who studied the few data fragments that escaped Golgoth's orbit, discovered something truly disturbing. Beneath the creature's monstrous strength lay intelligence, ordered, analytical, precise, and buried within that intellect a human signature. One name appeared once, and once only, across all recovered vox logs: Banner. The Mechanicus could not decipher its meaning. To them, it was a code, a myth, a corrupted identifier. But the truth was more terrifying. Banner was the man within the monster, a consciousness of science and sorrow fused with a god of wrath. A being whose intellect could guide destruction as easily as his fists could cause it. In the archives of the Ordo Xenos, there exists a single line in an inquisitor's marginal note, scrawled hastily beside a redacted report. If intellect and fury unite, even gods may fall. Those words remain the only surviving reflection on the day the Hulk arrived in the grim darkness of the far future, a universe that had long forgotten mercy, but was about to remember fear. The first official contact between the Imperium of Man and the entity known as the Green Titan occurred to standard months after the initial anomaly on Golgoth. The Inquisition had argued bitterly over how to respond. Some called for immediate exterminatus before the infection spread beyond containment. Others, the more cautious among the Ordo Xenos, insisted that Golgoth be studied first. Reports spoke of orcs showing signs of organization, of weapons functioning beyond their usual crude design, of psychic disturbances unlike anything registered before. The High Lords of Terra hesitated, and in that hesitation the galaxy shifted. Finally, a decision was made. The Imperial Guard would send a reconnaissance force to the surface of Golgoth, a small detachment led by the 114th Cadian Expeditionary. Their orders were simple: observe, record, and if possible, destroy the source. They did not know they were being sent into legend. The transmission logs recovered from their flagship, the Gloria Invictus, survive only in fragments. What can be reconstructed paints a scene of dread and awe. As the fleet descended, sensors immediately began to fail. Electromagnetic interference flooded every system, not from the warp, but from something else, something pulsing across the planet like a heartbeat. The sky bled green. The surface below flickered with immense forges, thousands of fires arranged in deliberate patterns, their glow visible even from orbit. The officers assumed it to be a trick of the light. It was not. When the dropships entered the atmosphere, their augurs picked up rhythmic vibrations across the wasteland. They sounded like marching millions of synchronized footsteps. The Cadians had fought orcs before. They knew their chaos, their madness, their noise. But this ... this was different. This was order. The orcs were marching in formation. Columns of armored vehicles, real tanks, properly aligned, their treads not tearing themselves apart, their guns coordinated. And at the center of it all, standing above the horizon, like a living monolith, was the Green Titan himself. The Cadians' commander, Colonel Rethenvale, recorded a single line before communications were lost by the throne. They're saluting him. The orcs were not howling, they were not killing each other. They were assembled like soldiers, facing the colossal figure that towered over them. The Titan raised one massive hand, and in perfect unison, the orcs roared, not in rage, but in ceremony. It was not a war cry, it was a chant. Hulk, Hulk, Hulk. The sound carried through the cum channels, breaking vox filters, echoing across every ship in orbit. The Cadian troops stared in silence as the creature turned toward them, eyes glowing with the same viridian light as the warp tier that had birthed him. Contact was made seconds later. Anti-aircraft fire, perfectly timed and frighteningly accurate, filled the skies. Dropships were torn apart before they touched ground. Those that did crash survived only long enough to record images that would haunt the Imperium for centuries. Orc artillery batteries operating with machine-like precision, gargants walking in formation, and strange constructs of metal and flesh that resembled dreadnoughts but pulsed with organic movement. The Hulk's influence had transformed the orcs into something unrecognizable, an army with purpose, discipline, and design. The Mechanicus later concluded that the entity was unconsciously guiding their collective psychic field, aligning the random energies of the WAAAGH into a coherent signal. Under his command, even the laws of physics began to bend differently. Orc technology, usually held together by belief and chaos, now obeyed logic. Their weapons no longer relied purely on superstition. They actually worked. They fired because they were built correctly, not because the orcs believed they would. This paradox, logic fused with madness, terrified the Adeptus Mechanicus. If the orcs could learn structure, if their endless numbers found unity, the Imperium itself would be overrun. For weeks, the Cadian fleet circled above Golgoth, too afraid to engage, too proud to retreat. The Emperor's silence weighed heavily upon them. Prayers went unanswered. Astropaths reported voices in their dreams, not demons, but something green and furious, whispering, "You can't stop it. You can't stop me." One by one, the astropaths died, their minds consumed by the psychic storm swelling below. Then came the signal. The Hulk spoke. No Vox system recorded it, no comms channel carried it, yet every soldier, every officer, every machine spirit aboard the fleet heard the same voice inside their skulls. It was deep, guttural, and absolute. Leave Hulk's world, or Hulk will come to you. Colonel Vale refused to believe it. He ordered orbital bombardment. 100 macro-cannon shells fell upon the wastelands. The explosions lit the horizon like suns, and when the dust cleared, the Green Titan still stood. He raised both hands to the sky, and the ground itself began to rise with him. The seismic readings went off the scale. From beneath the surface, massive plates of metal and stone heaved upward, forming an artificial shield that covered the Orc strongholds entirely. The bombardment ended as the fleet's guns overheated, many bursting under their own pressure. Then, without warning, the shield split open, and the Orc counterattack began. The first wave was not ships, but debris, asteroids, hurled from the surface like missiles, propelled by engines salvaged from fallen Imperial vessels. The second wave came in the form of teleport strikes. The Orcs had mastered teleportation. Thousands of them materialized aboard the Gloria Invictus, simultaneously tearing through corridors, shredding bulkheads, overrunning decks within minutes. The Cadian defense collapsed. In the chaos, Colonel Vale attempted to trigger the ship's self-destruct sequence. He almost succeeded. Almost. The last image transmitted to orbit showed the Hulk himself, standing on the Invictus's bridge, surrounded by Orcs. He held the ship's power core in one hand, glowing like a captured star, and then, with a single motion, he crushed it. The explosion destroyed half the fleet. The rest scattered into the void, fleeing in silence. The Imperium would not learn of their fate until decades later, when a lone escape pod was recovered by a black ship near the edge of the Cadian Gate. Inside was a single survivor, a Vox operator named Mirren Howe. Her mind was shattered, but fragments of her account were extracted under psychic reconstruction. Her words became the foundation of the Inquisition's sealed report. He wasn't angry like the Orcs. He was calm. That's what made it worse. His eyes were burning, but his voice, it wasn't rage, it was reason. He looked at me and said, "Hulk makes things better now." And then, the ship came apart. The Imperium realized then that the entity was evolving. The banner consciousness within him, the human intellect, was merging fully with the beast. The Hulk was no longer merely reacting to anger. He was channeling it, shaping it, controlling it. And through him, the Orcs were changing to law. Within months, entire sectors reported the rise of organized Orc fleets bearing banners of solid green and symbols never seen before. A clenched fist surrounded by lightning bolts. Systems fell in days. Planets that once took years to conquer were subjugated in hours. The Orcs no longer fought each other for sport. They were fighting for him. The Ordo Xenos issued its final verdict. Containment was no longer possible. Golgoth and the surrounding systems were to be purged. A full exterminatus order was drafted, but something prevented it from being executed. Golgoth was no longer visible in the warp. Astropathic contact failed. Every ship that attempted to re-enter the system vanished without trace. The Green Titan had not only conquered a planet, he had hidden it from reality itself. In the centuries that followed, whispers of the Hulk, WAAAGH, spread across the stars like myth. Worlds burned in silence, fleets vanished. Imperial historians dismissed the stories as superstition, yet deep within the archives of Mars, sealed beneath 1,000 layers of encryption, lies a fragment of binary scripture that still circulates among the Mechanicus priesthood. It reads, "The warp fears him, the Orks obey him, and the galaxy waits for when his anger runs out." The Green Titan was next sighted upon the ash plains of Armageddon's equatorial wastes. Orks swarmed the world in uncountable hordes, but something had changed in them, a rumor of reverence, a new superstition spreading through their warbands like wildfire. They spoke of a being mightier than any war boss, a god in flesh that even Gork and Mork would fear to fight. At first, the Imperium's officers dismissed it as typical greenskin delusion. Then came the reports: Ork fortresses flattened into slag, gargants torn apart by hand, and entire tribes vanishing overnight. Mechanicus Auspex readings confirmed seismic activity consistent with localized tectonic disruption, yet no orbital bombardment had occurred. The Adeptus Astartes of the Salamanders chapter were the first to make contact. Captain Varen led his strike force into the region, expecting to encounter an Ork superweapon. Instead, they found a wasteland littered with craters and burning wreckage. In the center stood a figure unlike any mortal being, towering, bare-chested, his skin a luminescent green that seemed to pulse with radiation. When they approached, he did not attack. He simply turned his gaze toward them, eyes glowing like molten emeralds, and the air trembled. Vox recordings captured what might have been a single word, uttered in a voice that cracked stone: "Leave." Moments later, a shockwave hurled the Astartes back hundreds of meters. Half their servo armor units registered catastrophic damage, yet the creature did not pursue. He merely walked away, each step carving a trench into the earth. Following this encounter, the Orks began to worship him outright, calling him Da, Biggest Fist. Their warlords painted themselves green in imitation, bellowing prayers of rage before battle. Strangely, wherever the creature appeared, Orks would converge, not to fight, but to witness. They cheered when he tore apart Imperial tanks, and even fought one another for the privilege of dying near him. The Magos biologists of the Ordo Xenos theorized that the being's presence somehow amplified the Orks' innate psychic field, feeding off their collective emotion, further increasing his power. The more the Orks believed in him, the stronger he became. This created a catastrophic escalation. Every Imperial bombardment that failed, every strike that bounced harmlessly off his flesh, only deepened their faith. Soon, entire sectors whispered of the Green Titan, the beast that even Exterminatus could not destroy. Inquisitorial records indicate multiple attempts to classify his nature. Some proposed he was an ancient bioweapon of the Old Ones, others a warp manifestation of unbound rage. One radical faction within the Ordo Hereticus even suggested he might be a shard of corn given flesh. However, psychic scans disproved any direct warp signature. He was not of the Immaterium. He was matter, pure, unrelenting, and infinite. The Emperor's tarot yielded nothing but static when queried about him. The final known Imperial attempt to subdue the creature occurred on the irradiated moon of Griffin 4. A full Titan legion, 3 companies of Astartes, and a detachment of Grey Knights were deployed under the command of Lord Militant Aaron Voss. The operation lasted 8 minutes. Vox transmissions capture only fragments, screams, thunder, and a voice howling in fury, so immense it ruptured auditory sensors. When orbital imaging reconnected, the moon's crust had split open. Lava spewed into space. The surface glowed red-hot. Of the 27 Imperial assets dispatched, none returned. The moon was declared lost. Since that day, the Green Titan has been seen rarely, often during the most catastrophic conflicts. He emerges in storms of fire, obliterates all before him, and vanishes. Some within the Mechanicus argue he may be immortal, not by divine protection, but through perpetual regeneration on a scale that defies known biology. Others whisper that he seeks a way home to a universe that no longer exists in the warp's chaos. Yet one truth remains constant. Wherever he walks, no force, mortal, Xenos, or demon, stands unbroken. Rumors persist that even Abaddon, the despoiler, ordered his fleets to avoid regions where the Green Titan was sighted. One intercepted chaos transmission recorded a single chilling remark: "Let the corpse god keep that beast." Even the War Master will not claim a world he guards. And so, the Adeptus Administratum sealed his records beneath 7 layers of prohibition. His name is struck from official archives. But among soldiers in the trenches, among hive-world children, whispering tales of impossible heroes, the legend endures. The myth of the man who fell from another universe and became a god of war in this one. The Imperium calls him a blasphemy. The Orks call him holy. But those who have seen him with their own eyes and lived to tell speak only one truth. When the Green Titan roars, even the gods of the warp tremble. Centuries passed, and the Imperium's bureaucratic decay buried the truth beneath propaganda and myth. But deep within the forbidden archives of Luna's Vault Primaris, sealed behind purity seals older than Gilliman's resurrection, a single fragment survived, an encrypted pictochord retrieved by a nameless explorator probe from the shattered remains of Griffin 4. The fragment lasts only 14 seconds. It shows a landscape of molten stone, skies bleeding crimson, and a colossal silhouette striding through the inferno. The figure burns but does not burn away. His roar shakes the feed into static. That was the last physical evidence humanity ever recovered of the entity now classified as Subject Gamma-Helios. In the following millennia, scattered testimonies resurfaced, fragmentary accounts buried in distress transmissions, Xenos intelligence intercepts, even Necron data crypts. One Ordo Chronos investigation uncovered evidence suggesting the creature does not experience time linearly. He appears across epochs, from the Great Crusade to M42, as if unstuck from causality itself. The Adeptus Mechanicus declared such a phenomenon theological paradox. Yet some within the Inquisition whispered a darker idea. Perhaps the warp itself fears him. If so, his existence may bend the laws of time to avoid confrontation with entities that cannot destroy him. By M42.1:1, a new anomaly was recorded in the Segmentum Obscurus, a massive energy surge equivalent to a planetary reactor detonation, yet no weapon signature detected. A Deathwatch strike cruiser, vigilant, resolute, diverted to investigate. What they found defied rational thought. A Tyrannid hive fleet, identified as Subfleet Kraken Sigma, had been annihilated mid. No Imperial fleet present, no orbital bombardment, no exterminatus protocols, only wreckage. Dozens of bioships floated in silence, ruptured as if crushed by invisible hands. In the center of the devastation, the green titan floated in vacuum, his body crackling with emerald radiation. He wasn't dead, he was breathing in space. The Deathwatch captain ordered all Uzbek's units purged and self-terminated his ship's logs before withdrawal. He understood what few in the galaxy ever would. This was not a creature that could be fought or studied. This was an engine of raw cosmic fury, wandering the galaxy, untethered by time or law. Among the Orks, his legend became religion. Entire was dedicated themselves to reenacting his battles. Some warbuses claimed to receive dreams of him, visions where he taught them to smash beta. An Ork prophet known as Scarblood wrote sacred glyphs describing a prophecy. Da, big green, not orc, not humi. He da, rage, o da stars, come ta, show da galaxy, who's boss. When the Ordo Xenos intercepted those glyphs, the Inquisitor, overseeing the case, remarked that their crude symbols resembled ancient Terran atomic diagrams. The report was sealed immediately. Yet, perhaps the most unsettling account comes not from the Orks, but from the Chaos Gods themselves. Daemon hosts have been known to scream uncontrollably when shown images of the Green Titan. In one interrogation, a bound entity of Khorne, upon witnessing his likeness, broke its bindings and attempted self-annihilation, shouting in low Gothic, "He broke the chain." The flesh that rage forgot. Before it was destroyed, the demon revealed that the Titan's rage does not feed Khorne. It consumes it. Thus, the Adeptus Administratum concluded that the entity represents a category unto himself, not mutant, not Xenos, not demon, a natural force born beyond the immaterium, impervious to corruption and beyond control. His arrival in the galaxy remains unexplained. Some believe a tear in the fabric of space brought him here, a rift between realities. Others suspect the Emperor himself allowed it, an act of divine irony, sending an avatar of unreasoning fury into an age that worships obedience. Whatever his origin, one fact is certain: wherever he goes, balance dies, planets fall silent, gods hesitate, and the galaxy, already teetering on madness, shifts further toward oblivion. In the margins of a forgotten Mechanicus data scroll, one nameless scribe dared to write a single forbidden epitaph, a warning, or perhaps a prayer. He is not a man, he is not a god, he is the wrath of existence itself. When all empires crumble and stars fade to dust, the Green Titan will still walk, carrying the rage of a universe that never learned peace. For centuries, the Administratum treated the record of Subject Gamma-Helios as apocrypha, a cautionary fable for junior archivists who strayed too far into forbidden texts. But in the 45th millennium, new evidence forced the High Lords to reconsider. Entire sectors along the eastern fringe began reporting the same phenomenon: planets stripped bare by unimaginable force. Their crusts shattered, orbital debris fields glowing with residual gamma radiation. There were no survivors, no known aggressors, no warp traces, only silence, and then the echo of a roar so deep it registered across Vox frequencies for light years. The first to respond was the death corps of Krieg, dispatched to investigate the loss of the Gera's system. They found the world of Gera's Prime split in two like a cracked skull. Oceans boiled away, atmosphere burned into ash. The regiment's commander transmitted a final message before contact was lost: "We have found him." Emperor preserve us, he's still angry. Then static. Not even their souls reached the warp. The report was sealed under inquisitorial authority, marked extremis obliteratus. As the phenomenon spread, Mechanicus priests attempted to calculate the pattern. The destruction seemed random, but one Magos named Kale discovered something terrifying. The affected worlds formed a spiral, expanding outward from a single point in the segmentum pacificus. That point was Golgoth, the death world, where the green titan had first appeared. The spiral's arms were widening, as though the universe itself recoiled from something too vast to contain. Kale theorized that each annihilated world represented a pulse of the Titan's rage, a heartbeat of cosmic fury, rippling through time and space. Inquisitor Lord Celestine, of the Ordo Malleus, authorized an unprecedented alliance between the Inquisition and the Astartes chapter, known as the Iron Hands. They constructed a containment fleet armed with null fields and gravitic anchors designed to trap a being of infinite strength. But even their calculations betrayed them. When the fleet reached the coordinates of the next predicted pulse, they did not find destruction. They found creation. A new continent had risen from the sea, molten rock forming impossible geometries. In the center stood a single figure, kneeling, surrounded by green flame that neither burned nor spread. The Iron Hands opened fire. Their bombardment vaporized the island, yet the Auspex readings spiked higher. Out of the explosion, the Titan emerged, walking through the void as though through air, the remnants of the bombardment falling around him like rain. What followed became legend, whispered even among Astartes. One strike cruiser S-logs survived long enough to transmit a picked capture, the Titan gripping an entire Thunderhawk gunship in one hand and hurling it into orbit. Another vessel's sensors recorded the Hulk leaping across the void, tearing open battle barges with his bare hands. The fleet disintegrated within minutes. The final transmission came from Kale himself. Containment impossible. The rage adapts. It learns. After that massacre, the Imperium ceased all pursuit. They did not issue a declaration of extermination. They did not name a crusade. They did what the Imperium rarely does. They pretended it never happened. Entire cartographs of the Pacificus segment were redrawn, erasing the path of the spiral. Only a handful of Inquisitors knew the truth. The Green Titan was still out there, but something about him was changing. Survivors from nearby systems began reporting visions. Civilians claimed to see a green light moving through the void, followed by dreams of endless war. But among the psychic echoes came something unprecedented: coherence. The dreams were not chaotic or demonic. They were organized, structured, almost human. Those who dreamed reported the same phrase repeated over and over: Banner knows. Within the Titan, the dual consciousness that had once defined his existence was merging completely. Banner's intellect no longer fought the Hulk's fury, it directed it. Logic became the weapon, anger the fuel. In one recorded incident, a derelict Mechanicus listening post intercepted encrypted binary transmissions that matched Banner's known mathematical patterns from pre-Imperial Terra equations describing energy transference, molecular regeneration, and matter manipulation. The impossible conclusion was that the Hulk had begun experimenting. He was learning to shape his environment, not through destruction, but through will. And as he learned, he began to build. Across the desolate remains of Golgoth, probes detected new structures, colossal machines powered by geothermal cores, cities of black iron rising from ash. At their center, statues of orcs and men stood side by side, cast in molten steel. Some Mechanicus scholars dared to interpret it as an attempt to create order, a civilization of strength where chaos could not thrive. Others believed it was mockery, a god's parody of human empire. Regardless of motive, one thing was clear: the Hulk was no longer wandering blindly. He was becoming a builder, perhaps even a ruler. His orc followers had evolved to now calling themselves the Sons of the Smash, their language a crude fusion of Low Gothic and Orc dialect. They worshipped him not as a war god, but as Da Boss, eternal, the one who broke the gods. Their psychic energy, unified by his will, coalesced into a field so vast that Imperial astropaths described it as a second sun burning in the warp. Some believed this new Wog field might one day rival the Astronomicon itself. The Inquisition, alarmed by this potential, debated exterminatus again, but none dared sign the order. To destroy the Green Titan's world might mean facing his wrath directly, and so the Imperium watched from afar, their fear growing in silence, while the galaxy's newest empire rose under the light of crimson skies. In those years of uneasy peace, the Adeptus Mechanicus recorded a single haunting data burst from the surface of Golgoth. It was a voice, deep, resonant, unmistakably human, but layered with something vast behind it. The transmission lasted only 6 words before the signal overloaded every receiver. Peace is just quiet before smash. The signal ended. The Emperor's tarot went dark for 9 days across the segmentum. Even the Chaos Gods grew silent. Whatever the Green Titan was becoming, the galaxy had begun to understand one truth. This was not simply a monster. This was evolution, wrapped in rage, marching toward godhood. For decades after the signal, the Imperium's eyes remained fixed upon Golgoth, the planet once thought cursed, now reborn in defiance of entropy itself. Vox relays, orbiting the world, recorded an unnatural stillness. No warp storms, no radiation spikes, no detectable life signs. And yet, beneath that silence, something pulsed, a heartbeat large enough to distort gravity, measurable even from light years away. Some within the Adeptus Astra Telepathica began to whisper that the Titan was not gone, merely dreaming, and in his dreams, reshaping reality itself. By M437, the silence was broken. Imperial patrols near the Maelstrom reported a new celestial phenomenon, a green sun rising where none had existed before. It radiated not light, but pure energy. Waves of gamma and warp harmonics fused into one impossible frequency. The first fleet to approach disintegrated before transmission. The second, led by rogue traitor Althea Riss, survived long enough to send imagery. Her final words still echo in the records of the Ordo Malleus. He-s, building worlds now, and they look back at you when you stare too long. What Riss had glimpsed defied Imperial logic. Suspended within the energy of the new sun were fragments of matter, continents, continents upon continents, orbiting each other in gravitational harmony, bound by the Titan's will. Each fragment glowed with the same radioactive green as his skin. Cities of iron and stone spiraled upward, forming titanic constructs larger than any hive spire, each one shaped in the likeness of the Hulk himself. At their core pulsed a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. On the surface of these impossible worlds, new life took form, not human, not orc, not any xenoform catalogued by the Imperium. Hybrid beings, of immense strength, crude yet ordered, violent yet structured. They worked tirelessly, reshaping rock and metal into perfect symmetry. The Mechanicus, watching through forbidden telescopes, realized what they were witnessing: creation through fury. The Hulk's rage had transcended destruction. It was now a creative force, building order from chaos. Among the Inquisition, the debate turned theological. Was this the birth of a new god, or the final evolution of the warp's corruption, the embodiment of mankind's hatred given form? One radical sect, the Ordo Ultima, claimed that the Titan was the Emperor's failsafe, a weapon seeded into the multiverse, destined to awaken only when the galaxy reached the brink of collapse. Others dismissed the theory as heresy, but even those who denied it could not ignore the signs. Astropaths reported that psychic traffic across the segmentum obscurus had become easier, as if the Hulk's presence was clearing the immaterium of turbulence. The warp had grown quiet, its storms retreating. The Chaos Gods, for the first time in 10,000 years, were silent. Within that silence, the Titan moved again. His creations turned toward the void, obeying a will beyond language. They constructed vessels, titanic, organic warships, forged not for conquest, but protection. From Golgoth to Armageddon, from Baal to Cadius ruins, signals began to spread, untraceable but unified. No more war, only strength. To the Imperium, it sounded like defiance. To the Orks, it was a call to arms. But to those few who still remembered the man beneath the monster, it was something else. A message from Bruce Banner, buried within an infinite storm. And then, one day, he vanished. No explosion, no warp tear, no light. The green sun dimmed and collapsed into nothingness. The hybrid beings he had created froze in place, turning to statues of stone. The energy that had sustained them drained into the void, leaving behind a barren sphere, quiet, lifeless, but perfectly symmetrical. Mechanicus probes named it Helios, null, the tomb of the Green Titan. Centuries passed. Pilgrims came and went, worshippers of strength seeking the lost power. Some claimed to hear his heartbeat beneath the stone. Others spoke of dreams, visions of green fire, and a voice whispering, still angry. But the Imperium forbade all travel to Helios Null, declaring it a dead world. Even so, every few millennia, someone breaks the law and lands upon its surface, and sometimes they don't come back. Those who do return are changed, stronger, harder. Some even glow faintly beneath the skin. The Inquisition kills them on sight. And so, the record ends, or perhaps merely pauses. In the archives of Terra, the file designated Subject Gamma-Helios remains sealed under 9 layers of encryption. Its final annotation, added by an unknown hand, bears no official sigil, only a single line written in ancient Terran English. When gods grow weary and empires crumble, rage endures. It remembers. Across the galaxy, a storm gathers once more. The Orks chant his name in forgotten dialects, their wogfields trembling. The warp flickers with faint green light, and deep within the endless dark between stars, something stirs, an ancient mind, neither man nor monster, awakening once again to a universe still addicted to war. When that day comes, no emperor, demon, or god will stand in his way, because, in the end, only one truth remains. The strongest there is cannot be contained, not by worlds, not by time, not even by death itself. The Green Titan sleeps, but he will rise again.